Hey, it's Taylor Ray of the 1P versus 2P podcast. With me, as always, is my brother and co-host, Ryan Ray.
Hey, what's up, Taylor?
Not much. We have a few housekeeping items we want to go over first. First thing is, if you normally listen to us on Clamor, that platform is officially shutting down. So just want to put that announcement out there. Of course, we're still available literally everywhere else. So you can listen to us on YouTube, Google Play Music, Apple Podcasts. What else?
Wherever fine podcasts are sold.
Yeah. In our case, yes, absolutely. Your favorite podcast app, it really doesn't matter. Just search for our show. You're going to find us there. If you're already listening, you've already figured it out. So congratulations. But anyway, just to get that out of the way, I also wanted to go over some mailbag items this week. So in response to our last episode, episode 85, which was that SNES Classic music tribute episode, that great playlist of remixes from Super Nintendo games, we got responses on Twitter, first by @Chortling_man saying some of his favorite SNES songs. He writes Chrono Trigger Boss Battle Theme, Gradius 3, Cosmo Plant. This is one I definitely recognize. Ninja Turtles 4, Turtles in Time, Alley Cat Blues.
Yeah.
That's the second level. That's also classic.
Definitely. I think the aim of that episode was to try to cover some of the games that were being featured in the SNES Classic, but those are for sure some very memorable music soundtracks and songs from the SNES era. Definitely Chrono Trigger had a lot of great battle music. Turtles in Time, very memorable arcadey sounds. A lot of games from that era. Really, really great soundtracks.
I agree. The spirit of that whole episode was to feature the games that are announced for the SNES Classic. So we had 11 tracks of the total 21. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a ton of games and a ton of other tracks that we might cover on a future music episode. We'll see. I don't know. And also on YouTube, we have a comment from Persian Immortal saying the original tracks sounded better in their 16-bit form. So we got a purist at heart. Really can't argue with that. I think you'd agree with him, Ryan, right?
Yeah, definitely. And with these music episodes, the little inside baseball is that we can't exactly post the original songs on YouTube for fear of copyright strikes. So we specifically seek out remixes from Game Chops and Overclock Remix and a bunch of other artists that we get permission to use their music on our episodes. Otherwise, we'd have to get the publisher. And typically, especially with Nintendo, it's pretty hard to get permission and to be monetized. And it's a whole copyright discussion that we don't really want to get into. Anyway, thanks for the feedback. I definitely agree that some of the original songs sound a lot better than some of those remixes.
We purposely curated these songs. You're right, absolutely, and especially with YouTube, that's automatic DMCA strikes. So we're trying to avoid that if possible. So that's why we got the remixes. Obviously, a lot of these, because since I put the episode up all together, a lot of these were my personal favorites. Ryan, I know you mentioned to me off air that the Corneria remix from Star Fox was your favorite from that episode.
Yeah, that was a really great remix. Featured some of the great dialogue, very memorable dialogue that kind of informed the later Star Fox games. Yeah, some good tracks in there for sure. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, so go back to that. That's episode 85. Just to segue to the SNES Classic, speaking of it, there was a bit of news about it because pre-orders went live for the US version on Walmart. And believe it or not, this was this past Friday, very late at night, so a lot of people missed it. But this listing was up for about 45 minutes, I would say. I happened to notice and get an alert within the first 10 minutes that it was posted. I remember texting Ryan, I texted my brother-in-law. We just got so lucky that we were able to pre-order those seemingly with no problem. Got the email confirmations, checked our accounts as of this recording today. We're recording this on Tuesday, July 25th. Our orders are still active, but a lot of reports online, on Twitter, at other outlets, Kotaku and Polygon, have reported that Walmart is canceling a lot of those SNES Classic pre-orders.
Yeah, a Walmart representative, somebody got in touch with a Walmart representative, allegedly saying that the item in question, the SNES Classic, went up a little bit early. Pre-orders were not supposed to go live for that quite yet, and yet they did. And now Walmart has more or less created a situation for themselves where customers are a little bit left in the lurch. They're canceling some orders. They haven't canceled ours. I still have my order. It shows that my order is still active and is shipping on time. And it's this really kind of dicey scenario where, in the coming days and weeks, other retailers are going to be putting out pre-orders for SNES Classic. And if you've been following the stories of these consoles, the NES Classic has been really a big hit. Pre-orders sell almost immediately. Actually, Nintendo's having a hard time keeping their Switch in stock. Pre-orders for Nintendo items are really, really hot right now. And the anticipation for the SNES Classic is really, really high. The Walmart website kind of crashed after they took a bunch of pre-orders for this stuff. But it's kind of an unfortunate situation because we don't really know what's going on. I'm not sure if Walmart's going to hold up their end of the bargain with our orders or people that they haven't exactly canceled on. Do I put another order in at Target or Amazon or GameStop or somewhere else? Or do I hold out in hopes that Walmart is going to, say, our bad, we're still going to try to fulfill these orders?
It's just really, really ugly. This whole situation is ugly. And it's very sort of strange. You get mixed communication here. We don't have official word. We've never gotten an official email. You have the official Walmart Twitter account saying one thing. You have chat representatives of people who've tried to pre-order the SNES Classic saying another thing. It's all very confusing and frustrating, so we'll have to wait and see. But for right now, let's just say we're super happy that we got a pre-order.
but to be honest with you, if you hadn't texted me and I didn't get in this window of opportunity, I'm not really going to go out of my way for the SNES Classic because as you tweeted out on our show account, I'm kind of in for this on the unreleased game in that package, Star Fox 2. The other games in that package, I have other ways of playing for the most part. And it just goes to show you that there's a kind of a fervor for this thing. I'm not sure that I'm willing to go on eBay afterwards, after the stock runs dry, after Nintendo stops their print run, which they've said they're going to stop. This is going to be basically a 2017 item. They're not going to produce any more afterwards. I'm not going to pay some guy $300 on eBay for this item. It's just, I
wouldn't either.
That's unrealistic. So
yeah, and the MSRP for it is $80. Easily, scalpers are going to sell this for double, triple the price on eBay. Certainly, Nintendo has come out and said we're going to produce more units than the NES Classic Edition. It's not going to be as limited, but it's still going to be hard to find. I mean, people are just setting up alerts all over the place as soon as it goes up. In this case, that's exactly the situation that happened with Walmart, and everyone was reacting in similar ways. Very surprised that it was up for 45 minutes. Typically, these things sell out in 10 minutes or less, easily.
Did you see the news item that ThinkGeek found a magic stock of NES Classics, and they were trying to bundle it with a bunch of crappy video game memorabilia? Some of it is not crappy, but ThinkGeek, if you haven't been following, is now owned by GameStop. If you walked into GameStop recently, you notice that they're pushing the plastic a little bit harder, the collectibles a little bit harder, and
that's an understatement.
Them finding a surprise mystery cache of NES Classics that they were willing to part, as long as you were willing to buy some of their memorabilia, that's probably filling all their stores. That's super shady, and I foresee a situation where the retailers themselves stockpile SNES Classics, particularly ThinkGeek and GameStop, and do this kind of bundle situation like they do with the Switches now, where they basically artificially constrain the supply and say, but wait, we have in stock as long as you're willing to buy this, Kirby plush doll or whatever. It's
it's very, very, very ugly. I have to say that I've been monitoring the situation too, because I'm in the market for a Nintendo Switch, and I do have some GameStop credit, and I would love to spend it on a Switch, but individually the thing sells for $300, and these obnoxious bundles, which have obnoxious little toys and basically a bunch of junk packaged, and with some games that you admittedly might want to buy, Breath of the Wild, for example, Mario Kart 8. Splatoon 2, but there's all these extras that really you're not saving any money for. You're spending $100 on top of that, so these bundles are like $400, $450 for some extra junk you may not want. And that's the exact same situation which is happening with the NES Classic Edition and ThinkGeek. So it's just very, very awkward. I don't think this is consumer friendly at all. They're getting a lot of negative reactions to this, and to be honest with you, if you look at GameStop and you see a lot more alerts for these bundles being available, people aren't buying these bundles. I think people are smart enough not to do this. With the NES Classic Edition, I think it's a little bit of a different case because it's a collector's item. People are still willing to shovel out that money, and those bundles are starting at $140, $150. And that's way over what it was originally selling for. I think it was $70 or $80. It's all really, really awkward. But you know what? They have hot products on their hand. Nintendo's back, has a resurgence. I'm sure they're loving the demand. It's just whether or not they're going to be able to meet this fan demand. They have all this positive reaction. They really need to capitalize on it.
Final word on this. Just release the SNES Classic and NES Classic games on the Switch. Just make a Virtual Console a thing. Why beat around the bush with this? People want to play the games. Don't make it so hard for them.
Because they don't make as much money. That's the real reason. And they know people will buy these things as collector's items. It's just really annoying because they're missing out on money from these people who are reselling these as scalpers. All right. Enough. I'm off the soapbox. Okay. Let's move on to our next topic. Oh, by the way, back to the mailbag real quick. We got a comment about Splatoon 2 because of the voice chat feature, which has been very awkward, which we'll get into in a bit, in response to a Eurogamer article that we shared on Twitter saying the Switch Online app is live. It's a bit of a disaster, specifically with Splatoon 2. At Clifton B writes, as soon as I read about how their service will work, I wonder why Nintendo wouldn't just team up with Discord. He's got a great point. Let's talk about that a little bit because, Ryan, you've been playing Splatoon 2 on the Switch. Tell me about your impressions and about how the voice chat works online.
Definitely. So I think Splatoon 2 is a really fun game. I did not play the original Splatoon, probably because I jumped in it a little bit too late. I had a Wii U, but Splatoon, the original one, seemed like a game that if you weren't playing from the get-go, if you weren't participating in the Splatfest, you were kind of missing out a bit. They had a lot of content updates. Nintendo really supported that game for a good 3 years before they kind of cut it out. Splatoon 2, for the most part, is Splatoon 1.5 or Splatoon Game of the Year edition. It has a lot of the same features. To be fair, the features are really great. The multiplayer is very fun. The matches rounds last about 3 minutes long, a little bit longer in some other modes. I think the ranked battle mode lasts like 4 minutes. There's even like a league mode once you get a certain rank in ranked battle that you can proceed with kind of like a more predetermined squad. That might also have a time limit. But anyway, the maps are really great. This game is a shooter, a third-person shooter, but the aim is not to kill or splat, in this case, enemy players. It's to cover the map with your team's color paint. For people who, it's a very accessible way to approach shooters, and for me, I really like objective type modes and shooters. I like capturing the flag. I like setting up the bomb. I like defusing the bomb. I like doing those kinds of things in games. My KD ratios in shooters typically isn't very high, but I'm very good at capping the point or, getting on the payload or whatever the case may be. And
I can attest to that. Yeah. Very good at objectives.
Splatoon 2 is a game singularly focused on that. These are 4-on-4 battles, and it feels really good to cover the map with your own paint. It feels good to coordinate teams. I wish people would splat their own spawns more carefully because it's easier to capture your territory a little bit better than it is the middle of the map or even to go into the enemy territory, but that's neither here nor there. The movement feels very good. This game has motion controls, which you can easily switch off. Some people say if you get used to them, it's the better way to play. I think that's more of like a keyboard and mouse versus controller situation. It's really up to your sensitivity. The motion controls work well for what they are.
How are you playing it? Are you playing it with the Pro Controller? Are you playing it with the Joy-Cons? How are you doing it?
I'm mostly playing this game in handheld mode, which has been really great. I can kind of roam around the house with my Switch. It controls really well with that. It's also pretty comfortable in the Joy-Con comfort grip that comes with the Switch. It looks great on the TV. The game runs at 30 frames a second, but to be honest, it doesn't. You don't really notice it. The art style for this game is in Splatoon parlance, super fresh. It's very, very colorful. It's a very lively world. My sense is that the social space is a little bit livelier than the original game. They've even created kind of a fake Miiverse for this game. People are kind of posting memes. There was an article that people are, the Switch doesn't have a stylus, so you would basically have to draw with your fingers, except that somebody has figured out a computer program where you can more or less design your own memes on a computer and then get it on the Switch,
nice.
Which is really fun. Yeah, there's some really fun stuff in there. Some questionable stuff in there too. Some squids that maybe look a little phallic, but Anyway, this is all to say that the game is really fun. It's super easy to get in and out of the multiplayer. The single player is a little bit more fully featured. It has some fun boss battles, but is still more or less serves as a tutorial for the multiplayer. And some fun new weapons. One of my favorite new weapons is the Splat dualies. These are dual pistols. Give you some kind of mobility. They give you like a dodge roll, basically. Really great supers and grenade type abilities that weren't exactly present in the original game. There's also a salmon run mode, which is kind of a horde style mode where you team up with 3 other people to collect eggs. It's a horde mode style thing. So this brings me to the point that our listener brought up is everything about this game is great except for the part where you try to play it with your friends. Or try to get the voice chat set up. To be fair, Splatoon 2 is not a game where you need to voice chat necessarily with anybody. However, Nintendo, Reggie Fils-Aimé in an interview said that one of the things that they were trying to avoid with this voice chat app was these bulky gamer headsets. But in their quest to avoid the bulky gamer headset problem, they've created a whole nother problem where this app does not work super well. To be fair, it's free, and I wouldn't want to pay. If at free, it's even too much. I wouldn't download it. You can only really join a lobby with your friend as you're matchmaking, and good luck trying to find that because the matchmaking, in my experience, tends to happen in like 10 seconds. The salmon run mode. You can really only play.
That's the co-op mode, right?
That's the co-op horde mode. You can only really play online at certain specified times, not all the time. Otherwise, you have to basically play it by yourself or in local co-op.
What?
Which is really unfortunate. When you try to voice chat on the app, oh god, there's so many restrictions that to be honest with you, I don't even want to really bother with it. I don't think anybody should really bother with it at this point. On top of it, you need the splitter that comes with the headset if you want to use it on the Switch. The whole thing is just such a nightmare that I agree with our listener. Why not just use Discord if you really want to chat with your friends? If you want to use the app, it has to be on active, not in sleep mode. If you get any notifications,
you can't switch to other apps, right?
You can't switch apps. If you get a notification, that it cuts you off. If your phone has like a setting where after a few seconds the screen goes off, it's going to cut you out. The whole thing is just why this would be like a voice app I would expect in 2005, maybe when Xbox Live first started. This is not the reality of 2017 where games that are less fully featured than Splatoon 2 have better matchmaking options. Destiny has better matchmaking options, and their matchmaking options were lacking. Like, it's so frustrating. The way that Nintendo has currently set up the matchmaking for Splatoon 2, their ideal situation is that you're just basically a rogue squid. You just want to play online. You don't care about who you're playing with. Because frankly, playing with your friends is such a hassle that I don't even really want to bother with it.
I just think that these are things that they could patch. I don't know that they will. It was similar with Splatoon 1. It was even more so because the voice chat option wasn't even there. And so that's disappointing. Good to know that the gameplay is still fun and fresh. To, again, use Splatoon's official marketing. And it seems like the style is still there. The music is still there. It seems still very fun. But yeah, this online stuff with the friends, these are solutions that have been resolved a decade ago. And it's sad that you have to use some sort of third-party solution to voice chat with your friends, that it's not integrated. And Nintendo has integrated this stuff in the past with even early DS titles.
Right, Metroid Prime Hunters.
Yeah, exactly.
It definitely had better voice chat, and that was that game came out 2008, something like that. It's crazy. Nintendo games have had better options than this. That's all to say that if I was reviewing Splatoon 2, I would give it a pretty high marks across the board, except for the part a little bit outside the game, some of the menus, a little bit too much menu clutter. The clothes options are really great. I love like dressing up my squid. The clothes have different abilities attached to them. Better clothes, you get more abilities on the clothes. You can scrub them. You can if you see somebody wearing a particularly cool set of items or items with abilities that you have, you can order it, and it's really a really great setup. And the only reason I would want to use their stupid voice app is that there are items that they aren't exclusive to the voice app, but it's another marketplace where you could potentially buy items that would carry over into your official game. So, that would be the only reason I'd even mess with the app. But yeah, Splatoon 2 is really great. If you have a Switch, I highly recommend it. Definitely one of the standouts on that platform this year. I think it's a definite must-own if you're interested in multiplayer shooters at all. Definitely way more accessible, I think, than more recent games like Overwatch. It's just really a lot of fun.
Speaking of multiplayer shooters, I know you've been checking out PlayerUnknown'S Battlegrounds as well, so we'll get into that. Let's settle the debate now, though. The abbreviation. PUBG, PUBG, PUBG. I mean, how are people saying it?
I think I've been saying it PUBG. I that's what I answered on the poll. I think some people on Twitter are referring to it as Plunkbat. I don't get that one necessarily.
I like that one. You can't use Battlegrounds because that's going to be confusing with Battlefield and Star Wars Battlefront, so you have to use something else.
Right.
So, okay. I like PUBG. Let's just refer to it as PUBG going forward. PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds.
All right, so for the uninitiated, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, PUBG for short, is a battle royale style game where it's in early access, where you and about 99 other people, so 100 people total, matchmake into an island, and you fly in an airplane. You parachute off of the airplane into the island, and basically try to kill each other to see who gets out on top, who survives the island.
Hunger Game style.
Hunger Game style, correct. And you're basically scrounging for weapons and items and backpack, and hopefully, this can get into a little bit of the gameplay and what the experience is like. But hopefully you will kill other players. Hopefully, at the end of it, if you are the winner, the game says "winner, winner, chicken dinner," and hopefully you are the person getting that chicken dinner at the end of the round. Rounds typically last about, I would say, half an hour to 45 minutes. Shorter if there are less people. There are a few different modes. You can play on your own team solo, in duos with 2 people, or in squads of up to 4 people. In the different modes, the game really changes the gameplay based on whether you're playing alone or with friends. I want to know your impressions of because you've watched some streams of this game. What do you think so far, just watching it?
Yeah, it's made me very, very curious. I mean, this is like the hottest game out right now. It's gotten, I think, millions and millions of players so far, and this game's already it's just in early access. It's not a full release. It's PC exclusive for now, but at E3 they were announcing console versions as well, so pretty soon Xbox One players will be getting into this. It seems like a very, very fun experience, very challenging. If you die early in the match, you can exit and queue up again. It seems challenging, but very tense and definitely winnable. Like, I see a lot of people trying the tactic of surviving as long as possible by camping in one location. What I think is what is ingenious is how this game forces you to move around. As I understand it, there's a radius that's constantly shrinking, and there's a timer that warns you, hey, the battleground area is constantly shrinking up until the point where the last few players are battling over a very, very tiny location. And to me, that sounds really, really fun. That is very much like Hunger Games style, and you're scrounging for very scarce resources, ammo packs, some helmets that can protect against like headshots, things like that, damage reducing items. It looks really, 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 really fun. I have to say, I'm very impressed so far. I haven't bought it myself. I think it's, what is it, $25 or $30 right now?
It's $30 on Steam in early access. Like you said, coming to Xbox One. The game does have controller support, but I'll be honest with you, this is one of the first shooters that I've experienced where I think keyboard and mouse is actually the way to go. I think those controls control way better. This game in early access is very janky. The motion of the characters is very, let's call it Counter-Strike 1.0, not very fluid, but I think actually that adds to some of the charm of the game. Some of the textures are very flat. The island itself is kind of like an vaguely Eastern European, Russian, Soviet style, abandoned military bases, communications towers. I think that is really appealing to the game. And it feels, in solo, the game feels very much like a tense survival action shooter. You're scrounging with the other people for weapons and trying to kill each other and trying to see out on top. And it can be very tense and very scary when you encounter somebody and they surprise you. You're like, oh my God, it might actually feel how in real life, how that scenario might play out. You're scared to pull the trigger, and all of a sudden you pop off 5 shots, and they've all missed, and the guy got you.
Yeah.
In duos or in squad, it takes a little bit more of that like Battlefield, Call of Duty, group politics thing where everybody more or less has to agree on a strategy, or your team is not going to succeed. I've been playing in squads a little bit more recently, and the people that I play with like to ride the edge of the circle. So what happens with the circle closing in is you're free to go outside the circle, but what starts happening is your health starts draining the longer you stay outside of the circle. And, as the circle starts closing and closing and closing, the teams are kind of getting more closely together, less spaced out. And of course, 4 people rolling in a squad, it's a lot easier to spot 4 people than it is 1 person running out in the woods. So it's kind of, one person more or less commanding 3 other people where they should be going. We're calling out, compass headings to see where we think shots are fired. It's a very different game than it is when you're playing by yourself. But all at the same time, I think it's a lot of fun. Definitely this year's summer jam of a game. A lot of people are in on it. It's also very watchable. The spectator mode is very great. If you happen to die in a squad, you can spectate the other players, and that can also be super helpful. You can still chat with them, unlike a lot of other squad-based shooters. It's really a lot of fun to play. And if you don't want to play this game, I would highly recommend checking out one of the many, many streams. It's just, this game is all around very fun. I'm very curious what it's going to look like when they eventually get out of early access, when they bring this to Xbox One. Are they going to keep those player bases separate for controller versus keyboard and mouse? Are the features that they're bringing, they teased at E3 that they're going to bring like mounting and climbing through windows. People are excited for like patch notes with this game. It's insane.
What are some of I want you to talk about like the jank of early access, or something that you've noticed while playing. And also, can you talk a little bit about, is there a progression system or things that you can unlock? I've recently read some news that they're putting in a lot of cosmetic items for real money that you can purchase in the game, right? Can you earn this stuff in game? Talk about that.
Yeah, so depending on how many people you hit or kill or the place that you achieve in the round, you get this currency, and the currency lets you buy these packs that give you randomized, basically cosmetic items, shirts, hats, pants, whatever you want to customize your character. Interestingly, you can also sell some of these items on Steam in the Steam Marketplace. So if you want to make a quick buck, that's also an option. But the currency and the cosmetics are more or less, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have any gameplay relevance. It just affects the way you look. Some of the jank is involved with the matchmaking, the lobby. Before a round starts, there's about 60 seconds where they spawn you into a kind of like a zone where all the weapons are, so you can play around with that. Sometimes the game freezes at that spot. Sometimes the matchmaking breaks. Sometimes the game straight up crashes. I've had games straight up crash on me. Sometimes I've had audio clipping issues, texture clipping issues. For the most part, this happens infrequently, maybe once every 4 or 5 times I boot up the game, but in the 15 hours or so, I haven't had too much jank, but there definitely is some janks. One time I was spectating and I couldn't rotate between players, so I was stuck watching the one person in my squad. That kind of stuff you would expect to see in an early access game.
Still, though, the attention that it's receiving, just the overall internet reaction I see is very positive about this game. I don't think I've ever seen something quite like this with something that's in early access. And this originally started as an Arma mod, is that correct?
Right. Initially, the controls kind of feel a little bit like an Arma mod. It's the movement is very stiff. I compare it to kind of like a PS2 era SOCOM game. Your character moves not like in Call of Duty where it's a little bit more arcadey, a little bit more fluid. It more controls like you think action figures would control. It's the movement is very stiff. You kind of have infinite stamina to run, which I'm not sure if that is a feature that's going to make it to the official game. It's kind of nuts. But
do you have the option to switch between third person and first person view? Because all the streams that I've seen have just been third person.
Yeah. So while you're running around, you can do third person, and you can double click the right mouse button to get into first person scope. Typically, when the game gets down to about 10 people, more people are kind of hiding in the grass or the bushes, and first person trying to scope out or sniper rifle people. That's how most people succeed at the chicken dinners, honestly.
And how many chicken dinners have you won?
I have not gotten any chicken dinners yet. The best I've done, the spiciest I've ever done, is 9 out of 99. So getting close, top 10, but not quite at the chicken dinner stage. I will definitely tweet out. The internet will know when I get a chicken dinner.
All right, stay hungry then. All right, let's move on to our impressions of the Destiny 2 beta, which, as of the time of this recording, is now over. Initially, over the past week, there was a closed beta, and then there was an open public beta this past weekend, and in fact extended to Tuesday. It's now over. Let's talk about what we thought about the game. I personally have picked the class Titan, which is what I played in Destiny 1, which is more of the tank kind of character with an ability to use like a bubble shield. There's even a super ability where you equip an actual sort of Captain America style shield where you can sort of dash around and melee other enemies, and you're a bit overpowered with overshields. Very fun play style for me. The beta just, drops you right into the middle of the action, into the middle of a strike, and without any tutorials, which I thought was a bit strange. There are a few things I'm still confused about when it comes to the abilities. They don't really do a good job of describing what you're seeing on your HUD. I still didn't get kind of a sense of how to pop off different abilities that I have. You get up to 3 from what I can tell. But even the controls menu didn't have it. But you have to understand this is a rough beta. I think this was just to test their matchmaking server loads, get people excited for it. That's what these public betas serve their purpose for. But
so the story mission that they pop you into is a kind of more story than they ever really had in Destiny 1. Destiny 1 kind of turned around their story bit once they had the Taken King expansion, but in Destiny 2, they kind of drop you off. More or less the story is
They're invaders who are coming in, trying to take over this giant sphere thing that's called
the Traveler.
The Traveler,
that supplied the light that lets you basically respawn infinitely in the original Destiny game. And there was some nonsense with the darkness and the light in the last game. Light was how you leveled up past the max level and got ready for raids, and was determined by your gear, and more or less was a separate leveling system. And anyway, in Destiny 2, I'm pretty sure that they're going to keep that system, but they're kind of more or less going to rejigger it, factor it more into the story. Anyway, it's this invasion. The NPCs from the original Destiny that you were more or less shopkeepers in the original game, are now a little bit more active. They cut in, they shoot bad guys. It's more story than the original game had. It's not, corned off into obscure grimoire cards. They're going to chase that angle a little bit. And then you had the option, once you completed that mission, the mission ends in kind of like a boss battle. And then you can go into the Strike. They also opened up the Crucible, which was the PvP mode. And the Strike was really interesting because, I don't know if you got this sense, Taylor, but the Strike for me had some elements that the original Destiny had, elements that were in raid dungeons that, like jumping through man cannons, or kind of more platforming sections, or the end of the Strike ends in this boss battle. That was more or less one of the boss battles in one of the original Destiny raids, where you fight this big Vex-like robot in the arena kind of shrinking, and as the arena is shrinking, more and more additional enemies are spawning in, and so it's this, trying to stay out of the outside of the arena while trying not to get shot, and also trying to take this big guy down.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting. I thought that made for a better Strike, which is honestly what they really need to do with Destiny 2. Make the strikes more exciting, not make the enemies so much bullet sponges. I think for you, I think your criticism for the original Destiny was that it didn't really hook you, it didn't really grab you like it did a lot of people. And with the expansions, they got a little bit better. They added some more features, they added new weapons, but they had so much bad taste in their mouth for the original player base for that game.
Yes.
And I think they're trying to right the ship with Destiny 2 with some more quality of life improvements. There's been some criticism that this is Destiny 1.5, but I think that's honestly, Destiny 2 is really what Destiny should have been in the first place. And this beta gives me the impression that they're trying to right the ship. They've changed some of the abilities. It's no longer a primary and a secondary weapon. And a power weapon. It is now, you have 2 primaries, and they've relegated some of the specialty weapons like shotguns and sniper rifles as power weapons. That may or may not prove to be a controversial choice. I play as a warlock. They changed the Sunsinger class, the fire throwing class, from the super ability from like a revive to now I get to swing a fire sword, which is, to be honest, not a change I'm super excited about. The cooldowns on abilities seem a little bit longer, I think, to balance the PvP a little bit more. There's been some talk that they're trying to balance the PvE against the computer modes, the strikes, more in favor for PvP balance. I'm not sure if that's going to be super good idea. A lot of people skipped the PvP in the original Destiny.
Yeah, well, I think going back to what you said about Destiny 1 not hooking me, I mean, there were reasons for that. I mean, I felt like the original loot drops rates were awful, just awful. Could never find rare or ultra rare items. Just that felt very not well thought out, really. And this beta for Destiny 2 actually didn't even feature any loot drops. So I understand that that's going to be in the final release. Like, obviously you're going to get drops just like in Borderlands or Diablo, and that'll be exciting. That I think is a great hook. But one of the things that really struck me was the strike in the beta had huge vertical style platforming. It wasn't just horizontal platforming, just jumping from place to place. It felt like they're using a lot more vertical space where you're looking up and you're looking down. I thought that was a big departure from Destiny 1, which had some of that in the raids especially, but not immediately within the strikes. So I'll be eager and anxious to see the overall level designs, how different they are, and how less repetitive from Destiny 1. That was another big complaint I had. You had to constantly grind through strikes, constantly, playing over the same things over and over again with uninteresting story elements. It had great shooting, but, there's a few extra things you need to keep in mind when you're buying a full-priced multiplayer shooter.
To be honest, I think Destiny 2, if you were expecting anything different from Destiny, you're not going to get that. Destiny 2 is definitely more Destiny. However, I think they seem to have been listening to feedback, and for better or worse, I'm not sure that the developers at Bungie know that Destiny has more or less taken the space that Borderlands and Diablo has taken as far as loot shooter goes. It's kind of more a hangout, a thing that you do while you hang out with your friends, as opposed to this thing that you really focus and pay attention to, which I think a lot of people dropped off in the raids because they didn't want to devote 6 to 10 hours to keep throwing, 6 people at this wall of a boss or this platforming section. And by toning down some of that stuff, incorporating some of it in the strikes, making it a little bit easier. The platforming in the raids was never a good idea, but if they make it a little bit easier, a little bit more accessible, not as difficult, I could see myself grinding through some of the strikes a little bit more variety in the missions. The bosses will be a little bit better. The strikes won't always
we don't
play
know
out.
that yet. Hopefully, but also in Destiny 1,
these are my hopes. The game comes out at the beginning of September. There's also a PC version coming out about a month after the PS4 release because PS4 is the console exclusive. A lot of features are coming to PS4 first, and then there's a PC version coming out. The PS4 version, interestingly, locked to 30 frames a second. PC version going to have 60 frames a second. I'm a little bit curious if the keyboard and mouse controls on the PC version are going to feel a little bit better, because in my mind, Destiny is kind of a perfect console shooter, controls well with a gamepad, and I don't really know that they're going to have a control for how they differentiate how people play between gamepad or keyboard and mouse on the PC version. But that's neither here nor there because we're going to be playing it on PS4. You and I are going to pre-order it. Our friend Matt, who was not excited, he was the first person to drop off of our Destiny group. He was the first person who was very excited about some of these Destiny 2 features. So hopefully you guys will play with me more often. I pumped in, with the Taken King, about let's say 200 hours or so into the original Destiny. Had a lot of fun. Bring back Thorn, the exotic weapon. I hope they make the loot drops a little bit easier to access, and all this stuff with the unlocking the great guns with this puzzle that you have to solve in a day, and you have to reach around the back of certain levels in a certain time frame. That stuff, to be honest, wasn't really that fun. Just make the guns accessible, make the shooting fun, and make the strikes a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's also coming out on Xbox One as well. I think you're right. Some of the initial features, some of the maps, I think, for PvP are arriving first on PS4. Some early features.
I think it's some exclusive weapons, one extra strike, and one extra map on Crucible that eventually will get released on Xbox One, but is exclusive for 3 months or however long their marketing deal is.
Well, and the other thing I also want to say, and then we can wrap this thing up, Destiny 1 didn't have integrated matchmaking with random people, which I found also very off-putting. You had to have a friends list and had to personally invite them into your party outside of the game in order to play together. You could not matchmake with random people. So say you wanted
for the raids, it had
Correct.
matchmaking for strikes.
Yes,
and
but the raids are the meat of the content. That's the most fun part that you try to beat after you reach the level cap. So that's the thing that you want to play after you've pumped in 10, 20 hours into the game. That just seems logical to me. So fortunately, Bungie has received that feedback, and Activision Publishing it has certainly recognized that as well, and they will definitely be putting out that matchmaking in Destiny 2. So look forward to more coverage. We'll perhaps cover it, review it later this year when it comes out on September 6th. September 6th. All right. Anything else you want to bring up, or we'll just wrap this thing up?
Let's wrap this thing up. I think those are the summer games we're playing. Summer games done slowly.
Yeah. What was that thing that you were texting me earlier that you already wanted to name this episode? Something like Spicy Summer Adventure.
Spicy Splat American Summer.
There you go. Nailed it. All right. I'll be sure to post that for this episode. All right. If you liked our show, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. We would greatly, greatly appreciate the reviews. Keep them coming. They're a very huge help. Please, please, please review us on both those platforms.
You can also listen to us on YouTube, Google Play Music, TuneIn, or our site, which is 1pvs2p.com, or search for us using your favorite podcast app.
Like us on Facebook, find us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter at 1pvs2p_podcast. As always, we want to thank Phonetic Hero for the use of his songs for our show, Coffee Stomp, and Super Manly Brothers X. Both songs are part of the compilation project Chiptunes Equals Win. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Not quite at the chicken dinner stage. I will definitely tweet out. The internet will know when I get a chicken dinner.
All right. Stay hungry then.